Welcome back to Woman, Conversations in Black and White. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Linda. We're recording our conversations about sensitive racial topics across racial lines to help each other learn, to identify topics of interest more, and to share with our listeners, encouraging you to do similar things. Today's topic,
and it's really not quite defined. This is kind of like a feed off of our last episode about CRT, critical race theory. And it came about because I was on Facebook and I found this meme and I sent it to Linda. I was like, we have to do an episode on this. And so the meme says, if Black children are old enough to experience racism, white children are old enough to learn about it. And so I sent that to Linda and she was like, great, yes, let's talk about that. Because in our schools, there are different experiences for many different things. But one that I distinctly remember when my kids were getting ready to go to school is I had to get them ready to be discriminated against. And this starts in kindergarten, folks. This isn't 5th grade, 6th grade, junior high. No, we have to get our children, Black people and people of color, have to get their children ready to be discriminated against because it is going to happen. And often those first experiences are at school. And so I was hoping and praying that my kids could at least make it till the 3rd grade before they were called a nigga or something racially discriminatory. My daughter made it to 2nd and my son only made it to 1st. And so to see, especially now, Linda, to see so many white parents crying and mad and angry that there are even discussions about race when literally people of color have been having to prepare their children. We have to steal our children's innocence and childhood early to get them ready to be exposed to prejudice and discrimination from those very same parents' kids. That's what it's coming from.
right?
But they're incensed about having to have their children be taught whole history or have the discussion about discrimination when I have to get mine ready to be called derogatory discriminated terms.
Mm-hmm. Of course, those two things go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The acts of racism and the absolute refusal to look at it or to allow it to be explored in a diverse setting. Yeah, so I'm sorry. That's in case you didn't hear what she said that her daughter made it to 3rd grade or 2nd grade?
2nd.
2nd grade. Her daughter made it to 2nd grade before she personally experienced racial slurs in class. Mm-hmm. And her son only made it to 1st grade. So think about your own children. If you're our listeners, it's like, think about your own children. Would you like to have to teach that to a 6-year-old? And tell them how to rebound from it and tell them how to handle it and how not to make it worse, and probably don't fight back and all these things that have to go hand in hand with that. That's really
essentially we have to teach them how to swallow it.
Yes.
And move on with your day. That is essentially what we have to do. Teach them how to swallow it and move on with their day.
Right. Precisely.
Because odds are the teacher is not going to address it. Administration isn't going to want to touch it. So we have to teach them how to swallow it and move on with their day.
Which is unhealthy in 1,000 different ways. You are a counselor, and I have done a lot of personal growth work. And it's like, what counselor says, oh, just swallow it and move on with your day? I mean, you don't do that to healthy people because it's not a healthy thing. And yet we all know that a 1st grade boy can't afford to fight back because he was called something racially slurring.
Right, because what will be looked at is his physical response to a mental and emotional assault. And we have a consequence for physical responses because we're a zero policy taught hit school, but we don't have any responses or protocols when someone has mentally and emotionally just insulted and attacked someone. We're not going to talk about that.
Right, exactly. And that's pretty normal. I mean, it's been a long time since I was sending my kids through school, but yes, that's fairly normal. the person that loses it and hits, no matter what the provocation, is generally the first one to get in trouble.
Right.
So,
Mhm. And so you have to teach them how to swallow it. And that starts in kindergarten, first grade. And then you carry that at least through high school, at least. And if you continue on through the rest of your academic and working career, how can I swallow this and continue to move on with my day?
right, right.
And
Which,
so
of
I
course,
think, mhm,
well, it's the same thing that Black people are being told to do in relation to the police, regardless of how egregious the offense is or the policeman himself or herself is being. It's like, just swallow it and move on, you know.
yeah,
And don't worry if your life's actually in danger, because probably you'll end up okay, you know. And it's like,
mhm,
it's the same dynamic. But the meme that you mentioned that you started with is
uh-huh,
this little meme that is going around addressing the fact that white people, some white people, do not
mhm,
want their children to have to learn about the realities of this in school because it's too uncomfortable. And it's like,
mhm,
well, what about uncomfortable here?
mhm,
So, yeah.
mhm. And unfortunately, most people receive all of their education through the avenue of school. It takes an extraordinary parent to teach extra lessons or different things outside of school to supplement the whole of school. So typically, and especially when it comes to race, if conversations, excuse me, if conversations about race do not happen in school, we have already seen from the trajectory of our nation that white people don't talk about race anywhere else. White people don't talk about race unless they have to. So if those conversations are not had at school, we will continue to produce generations of people who are living their lives completely oblivious to the realities of people who do not look like them, which means they're also not doing any work or making any changes to make life more equitable for people who don't look like them.
Right. Excellent. Excellent statement. Yeah. Say
Mm,
that again, if you would, just for clarity.
Um,
If
let's see
we
if I
don't
can
talk
remember.
about this at school. Yeah.
Yes, if we don't talk, most people get all of their primary education from school. Very few parents supplement educational holes. So if we don't talk about race and the impacts of discrimination at school, it will not be discussed anywhere else. White people have no reason typically to discuss race, racism, systemic racism, prejudice, or injustices. They simply don't do it. They can live their entire existence and not have those conversations, which means we will continue to produce generation after generation of people who are not aware, interested, or vested in making our society a more equitable one for people who do not look like them.
Very well said. Both the first time and
Mhm.
the second time. It was very
Okay.
good. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on what our listeners could do? I have seen a title. There's something called a kid's book about, and there's a kid's book about, and I think the very first one was a kid's book about racism.
Yes.
But there's lots of
Mhm.
other topics too.
Mhm.
Grief, a kid's book about grief. And I don't
Mhm.
actually own one of those, but do you have any um, suggestions for our listeners here who might want to explore more about what's going on in the schools and what could be going on for their children's sake? Anything like that?
There is a kids book about racism that I love. I've said it before, I'm a counselor. I work in an elementary school, so I work with the littles. It is, you can have more conversational things with middle school and high school, but it does impact the littles as well. They are aware of race. They may not be able to vocalize it as clearly and succinctly as you and I do, but they are aware of race and the differences between races and who is treated and how people are treated based on race. Many, many years ago in the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, there were two black psychologists by the names of Dr. Kenneth and Mamie Clark. And they were the inventors of the doll experiment that many people talk about, where you sit a child down and you show them a black doll and a white doll, and you ask which doll is the good doll, and they'll say the white doll. Which doll is the smart doll? They'll say the white doll. Which doll is the healthy doll, or all the positive attributes children, both Black and white, attribute solely to the white doll. And
Wow.
these are elementary age children. And then they'll ask which doll is bad. They'll pick the Black doll. Which doll is stupid? They'll pick the Black doll. Which doll isn't smart? All of the negative connotations are attributed to the Black doll with both Black and white students. So that was the research that was used in the citation when the Supreme Court ruling came down with Brown versus Board of Education. Kids already know in elementary age students that in our society, all the things that are good are attributed to whiteness and all the things that are bad are attributed to Blackness. So they already have those implicit biases that we talk about are taught and ingrained in 4, 5, 6-year-old students. So they are aware of race. Us not talking about it only allows those implicit biases to grow, and eventually where you have full-blown grown people acting in either subversive or subversive racist tactics. So kids can feel it. They know it. It is in them. It is for us as adults and educators to begin to have those conversations and affirm goodness to all hues, affirm educational attainment to all hues, affirm positive, personality dispositions to all hues. Because if we don't, society only cements what they've already picked up living in everyday life.
There's no chance for change in the coming generations if we cannot talk about it at schools one way or another.
Right. Because it's not being talked about in white homes, evidently, in that way, in a more productive manner, not enough. So schools are the only place where we can begin to have those conversations to shift those implicit mindsets that come solely from society. There is no other place for that void to be filled.
Wow. So, very clear. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that if you want books or books for children to give you a jumping off place to talk with your children or grandchildren, you can find some. But right at the moment, we don't have any more than that one to recommend. So
that is one. Also, Sesame Street has done a great episode on race, and usually elementary age kids love Sesame Street. So go to YouTube and you can find just type in Sesame Street and race. They do great conversation on challenging topics, and race is one that they did that I share with my kiddos on a regular basis at school to begin to have those conversations because they feel it. They are growing up and absorbing everything in the society just as we are. But we are doing our children a disservice by not having targeted conversations about that.
Right. I completely agree. So, all right. Well, that's a couple things to recommend. I'll try to put them in the description below so that you can find them easily. And Bernadette, you're good at closing.
There we go. So thanks for spending time with us. Continue. Well, yes, look up those resources. Have those conversations. Kiddos are feeling and learning and absorbing things just as we are. So don't be afraid to broach the conversation. They will talk to you. I promise they will. They'll talk to you. So like we always say, start talking, keep talking. Start doing the exact same things with your kiddos and your teachers and your principals and everyone that your children spend a vast majority of their time with. Have those conversations. Yep. So we'll see you next week. We look forward to seeing you soon.